a car company. In 2021, it became a public company with a valuation of $100 billion on its first trading day. This was the biggest IPO in nearly a decade for a company, and the most confusing of them all, they had not sold a single electric vehicle before their IPO. Electric vehicles are more evil than you can imagine, and it is quite possibly one of the world's only products shrouded in more mystery than anything else. And yet you probably know nothing about this. And if you do see an advertisement for electric vehicles, you probably think that we are indeed making a difference to the world. But this couldn't be any further from the truth, because in the span of just a few years, electric vehicles rose to become a dominant force in the world, and they are not alone in that venture. It is in fact a very disturbing reason they have been so successful, and it's the reason why the world is slowly heading towards the proposed eradication of petrol and diesel cars, and you are possibly completely oblivious to this. The first part of this lies in the initial rise of electric vehicles, which dates back to when the US car market was saturated, with established automakers like Ford, Honda, and Chevrolet. But one company stood out from the mix, and that was the electric car maker, Tesla Motors. In 2012, Tesla quickly gained notoriety and shook up the status quo when it released its flagship car, the Model S. Tesla's release positioned it as one of the few successful independent automakers and a pioneer in the electric car market. Notably, it also provided to be a hit with auto buyers. But during the slow rise of Tesla electric vehicles, the oil industry's massive campaigns were on par with the misinformation campaigns that were being promoted by tobacco companies, with a spending of around $3.6 billion in advertisement to protect their own interests and undermine the growing popularity of electric vehicles and the science behind climate change.
Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam.
Well, the trouble is, people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis.
Now, just a decade later, we never see such advertisements, and the most puzzling of them all, oil companies have now been trying to increasingly spend hundreds of millions on supposedly green energy. So that makes you think, what really happened? Are electric vehicles really the answer for our emission rates? But the reality is far more complex and troubling than it may seem on the surface. You see, since the dawn of civilization, every industry that has ever existed was because there was a demand for a particular service or product. And when that demand was present, the market would naturally favor those who would supply it. Today, the electric vehicle industry is no different. We are seeing a clear trend in which individuals, governments, and countries are increasingly gravitating towards electric vehicles. This is a natural phenomenon that has played out time and time again throughout history, and it is clear that the future belongs to those who can meet the evolving needs of the market. Rivian is a prime example of a car company that was initially seen as a major competitor to Tesla. Despite not having sold a single vehicle yet, Rivian quickly attracted significant investment, and in 2021 it became a public company with a valuation of $100 billion on its first trading day. This was the biggest IPO in nearly a decade for a company, putting it ahead of General Motors and Ford. This was an unprecedented achievement for a company, and the most confusing of them all, they had not sold a single electric vehicle before their IPO. So if you are a multi-billion-dollar oil company, simply trading oil without people's trust cannot be sustainable over the long term, because the world thinks we are not green enough, and increasing advertising budgets on promoting fossil fuels would just be a waste of money now. So we need to find another way to gain people's trust. You know what? Why not join the revolution and promote a positive image of our oil industry? Let me rephrase that. The energy industry, I mean. The shrewd decision to rebrand and promote their oil as an energy source was a masterful move to mask their true intention and absolve themselves of any negative associations. But make no mistake, behind the facade lies a sinister reality. Although fossil fuel is in fact a source of energy that provides the electricity for your electric cars, your telephone, your home lighting, it does not shy away from the fact that tons of CO2 are being produced, while at the same time they present to the public that they are indeed part of the solution. The strangest of them all is that oil companies have been spending over $750 million on a yearly basis on green and renewable energy. This is $500 million more on advertising budgets than the electric vehicle companies themselves. Just imagine, the ad cost of all electric vehicle companies combined is less than just a couple oil companies. Advertising budgets larger than the GDP of nations. have fueled the minds of the masses to get rid of your normal combustion engine cars because they are producing more carbon dioxide, and electric vehicles apparently produce minimal CO2. And you should be the one to help the planet, and you should be the one to put a stop to global warming. And we, as the oil companies, will increase the output of our energy to you, because how else are you going to drive your new, beautiful cars? Is this truly the path towards a sustainable future, or just another well-crafted illusion?
Virtually every recognizable person in American politics and entertainment flies private. Nancy Pelosi flies private. Barack Obama flies private. Leonardo DiCaprio, famous, flies private. You know who flies private? A lot? Al Gore flies private. Michael Bloomberg, boy, does he fly private. In a 4-year period, the UN climate envoy, Mr. Bloomberg, took more than 1,700 private flights, burning more than 10,000 metric tons of CO2. You could never do that. If you filled your yard with diesel engines and never turned them off, you would not do that. Your car emits less than 5 metric tons of CO2 a year. So this is meaningful. This is an actual offense against Mother Earth and the climate. So you have to wonder what the defenders of climate think of this. What about the climate warriors at Greenpeace and the Sierra Club and the Environmental Defense Fund? Have they noticed this? Not really. Have they scolded their donors for undermining their core message? No, of course not. Catherine Clark, the incoming Democratic Party House Whip, doesn't complain either. She should be, because her own child has nightmares about climate change.
The oil industry has convinced everyone that electrifying vehicles is our only solution to reduce our carbon footprint, and that has made us only focus on cars and nothing else. But we forget that there are many sectors in the world that produce tons of greenhouse gases, with the car industry only accounting for less than 6% of the CO2 emissions. We've been convinced into thinking that the electrification of vehicles is the only answer to our carbon crisis, blinded by the oil industry's persuasive rhetoric. But in our singular focus on cars, we've neglected the countless other industries that contribute to the staggering levels of greenhouse gas emissions. We've placed all of our hopes into this one solution, and the scary reality is that the electric vehicles you are buying are not going to make a dent in the world greenhouse gas emissions. This is what an oil major, ExxonMobil spokesperson Casey Norton, mentioned, that even if every car sold in 2025 was an electric vehicle, leading to every passenger vehicle in the world being an electric vehicle by 2040, the world demand for oil and gas would be the same as it was in 2010. The electric vehicle market has turned into such a lucrative business, even for governments, so why would they put a stop to it? And the best of all electric vehicles are one of the very few products that make people feel as if they are making a difference to the world without knowing anything. I personally have nothing against electric vehicles. I think they are a great invention and should be integrated slowly and appropriately into the society. But telling the populace that buying an electric vehicle will benefit the world is a complete false reality. Instead of focusing on improving rail lines, your buses, and promoting cycling to reduce emissions, we are bombarded with the wrong message all the time, and that just believing that global warming can be solved if everyone drives an electric vehicle is just a disguise with a dark reality behind it.